Alright, you guys, so I wish I could say I'm unique in this concept, but I'm not. So it is the top 21 eyeshadow palettes of 2021. Whoever originally came up with that is pretty catchy, I suppose. Anyway, you guys, so we're going to dive into the top 21 eyeshadow palettes of 2021, and in no particular order. I just couldn't do it, you guys. I could not rank these. That would just cause me stress. A lot of stress. So I'm not going to rank them. I'm just going to go by, probably by brand. But yeah. Alright, guys, so we're just going to head into the video. You guys, so I'm going to start with Colourpop. I mean, I say this all the time. You cannot keep up with Colourpop. It's impossible to try. And unless you're on their PR for a year type thing, then you just will forever be buying Colourpop. But for the top 21, I actually have quite a few of Colourpop. 2, 4, 6. Counting is fundamental, right? Anyway, I have 6 eyeshadow palettes. And the first one, you probably see me waving around here. This one is actually relatively new. It's an Emerald Way. This palette, I love these tones. This is so, I'm not going to swatch all of them, but let's see, I'll at least swatch that. Can you guys see that? It's probably not going to really show on camera, but this is a really beautiful, as it says, emerald palette. And I love this for just kind of a pop of color, or you could even use this entire palette in and of itself. This is a really good one. Another one as part of their line is, okay, you guys, don't come for me. I know I'm going to pronounce this wrong. It's called Agate, A-G-A-T-E. Anyway, you can look it up. It's a pretty purple palette. Itty bitty purple palette. And I will say, these little quads from Colourpop, don't sleep on these, because these are some really good quality, and you get just enough shades. I mean, it's a quad, but you get just enough shades, and they do really well at curating them. So the second one I would have, I'll probably put a counter up there because I will probably forget count. But the second one I have is the Colourpop Agate. And then they released a Zodiac collection with quads for all different signs, and the two that I really love a lot are Taurus, because I love this green. Olive green is like one of my favorite colors to wear. I can smoke it out. I just love me that green smoky eye. But this one isn't as dark, but this one you can still get the feel for that type of look. It's very natural, very earthy. If you know anything about the Zodiac, that's would make sense for Taurus. But this is the third. I'm counting right so far, you guys. That's the third palette. And then the fourth palette that I have in the Zodiac, the fourth quad that I have from Colourpop, this one is actually really beautiful. I love the tones in it. It's the Virgo palette. This is like a mauvey palette. I don't know another way to describe it. It's just so beautiful on the eye. You have a deeper shade here, a transition, a nice little duochrome, and a shimmer that you can use as an inner corner, or just actually pop it on the lid. I give it that extra, you know, oomph. This is a really, really good quad. This one actually surprised me a lot. So those are the 4 quads that I have. So the next palette that I have in the top 21 is still within Colourpop. It's the Colourpop It's a Mood palette. This one is very similar to the one that they did a while ago with Kathleen Lights, but this one has so... I actually did a video on this. I'll put a little picture of the video, a thumbnail picture on the screen below. But this is such a beautiful palette. I love the fact that it has colors. It's a perfect fall palette. It has a lot of jewel tones here. I love how they laid this out here in columns. So it makes it easier to kind of come up with a look if you want a monochromatic look. You can also do it in quads here. I maybe could try Rose, but that one would probably stretch you a little bit to come up with something. But this is just such an easy palette to use. I always say you can wear makeup whenever you want, whatever season you want. But this definitely, if it's season appropriate, that is my timer. Hold on. Sorry, you guys, I may say something I've already said, but it seemed like just a quick little swipe over for you, but my timer went off on my phone and then the internet connection dropped. So we're back, even though you didn't know I was gone. But anyways, just to wrap up this palette, I really enjoy it a lot, definitely because of the jewel tones again. I love the way it's laid out, and I love it for fall. It's just kind of really up my alley. And the last palette that I have from Colourpop, now this one is nothing revolutionary. However, is really a nice palette, and it's relatively new. It's the Colourpop Gone Matte. Now, I'm sure with a lot of these, if you have quite an extensive Colourpop collection, you can probably dupe them out, at least in tones and things like that. But the thing is about this one is this is a really, it's kind of big. It definitely is one of their, it's a mega palette, but this is great for someone who's starting out. This is great if you have, you kind of want all of your matte shades, essential matte shades in one palette. I'm not a makeup artist, but I would imagine that this would actually be beneficial for that as well. I love the tones here. You have a rose here. These look very similar on my skin tone. I had it all swatched on my arm, kind of came off a little bit. But these two rose look very similar. Oh, let me make sure it's in frame. For if you're my skin tone or deeper, you're probably not going to notice too much variation with those. But I love the fact that it has a warmer brown. You've got cooler browns in here. You've got the mauves, the dusty purples, and this gray column here. It just has a lot of variety, and I think this is a good starter palette and also a good addition to your collection if you just kind of, there's something to be said about convenience when it's all in one place, and I am a fan of that. So on to the next brand. Wait, you guys, there actually is one more Colourpop palette that I'm just going to insert after the Colourpop. It's the Quartz palette. This one really kind of reminds me a little bit of the Snatchel, but with a different, oh, Snatchel is coming up. You probably haven't seen it yet because I'm inserting this clip. Anyways, guys, so the Quartz palette, this one, it's cool tone and the shades. I mean, this color story just speaks to me personally. I don't know how to describe it. I just love the fact that it's warm and cool, and it has just a vibe when you put it on your eyes. I mean, you can wear it with brown, you can wear it with black, you can wear it with white, tan, you can wear it with so many different colors, and it just adds, even though it's not a colorful palette, it adds just this life and this kind of interest to your eyes when you do any look with this one. Yeah, so the Quartz palette from Colourpop. So the next brand I have here in this best of 2021 is Nars. I really like I really like Nars. Nars for me is just, it's edgy with their packaging. You can see it, the whole presentation, and even the quality is actually what it should be. The quality is good too, and I can't say enough good things about Nars. I love to collect Nars and use Nars. So the first palette that I have here, I cannot read it. Sorry, it's gonna probably blind you. The Bijou Palette. This one, oh, I love these tones. See, look at the packaging. Looks like tape here. It's another jewel tone palette. You'll see quite a few of those. It's kind of follows my favorite season, so I tend to gravitate to those. But this one, I love the fact that has a green row, which is one of my soft spots here, but then you have the neutrals here, so you can make kind of a bronze look, a natural look. You can even warm it up. You can do a little bit of grunge here. You can mix them all and match. I really enjoy this, and I would show you the mirror, but it'll blind you, but it's the size of this box here, slightly smaller. So it's kind of one of those all-in-one palettes. I was really surprised to see this and really, really love it. The second palette that I have from Nars is the Climax palette. Now this looks, people have compared this one to the Jaguar palette from Huda. It's somewhat similar. Again, here, it's kind of similar to the other one in that you have different tones in there, warm tones and cool tones, but this is much more muted, and this blue here is so gorgeous on the eye. I love this one because it's more of a sultry palette in my opinion. You can get just kind of the depth that you want, and then you have just these different tones of colors that you probably see a lot, like the blue and the green and this brownish here. So this is definitely one of those palettes that had to make my top 21. Okay, next up is just one from Scott Barnes. Scott Barnes is, he's one of, but I know he was her main makeup artist, but JLo's makeup artist. This palette here is called Snatchel 2. Let me tell you about this one here. Can you make sure it's in frame? This is the sexiest neutral palette in my collection. It's just, and you wouldn't think so by these tones, but when you put them on your eye, they're just this different dimension to a smoky eye, and just, it brings just, I can't describe it. I have to actually show you, but I love this palette. I mean, just love the take on the neutrals in this palette. Like, I think everyone has 1, 2, some 10, 20 neutral palettes, but it's hard to make a neutral palette that's different, that actually grabs you and has the quality there. And this one has it. It's just incredible. I don't think the camera is really going to pick up just how beautiful these tones are in person, but trust me, this is one to think about and really kind of take a look at. This Natural Palette by Scott Barnes. Alright, you guys, so what would a top 20 eyeshadow palette video be without Miss Natasha Denona? I mean, I rave about her. I'm so glad that she has, this is her midi size, which brings the price down and you still get the same number of shades, the same qualities there, versus her larger palettes, and she even has minis, just so that more people can experience her formula. There's a reason that they cost so much, and there's a reason why so many people talk about Natasha Denona. But this one is specifically, I loved this palette immediately. I didn't see too many palettes in this tones or this shade range that really grabbed me, but then when this retro palette came out, it was just all the rave. Just everywhere, and for good reason. I mean, I would have to say you have to kind of like these colors, clearly, because it is, even though you've got nice different takes on the tones here, it is basically a mauve palette, right? But the thing about this one is you have different formulas in here. You have her shimmers, her mattes, which just are out of this world the way they perform, and then the glide on those shimmers, you guys. I could probably talk a whole video about this one, but I have other palettes, so I'm not going to just dive too much into this one. But this palette, absolutely one of my favorites. I love this color story, and I have quite a few, but this one is definitely unique. And so, Retro Palette by Natasha Denona. And the next Natasha Denona, I only have 2 Natasha Denonas this year in my top, best of. But when this thing came out, I mean, it about broke the app shopping and internet's webs and all that good stuff. It is the Natasha Denona Glam Face Palette in the color Dark. I have to tell you guys, when I first saw this, the promo pics, I wasn't impressed. I was like, okay, I mean, whatevs. But when you try these, it is so rich and beautiful and saturated, and I mean saturated with purpose. Like, it holds its color even when you're blending it out. This is incredible palette, and it's a face palette, so it's not just, I'm kind of cheating a little bit, it's not just an eyeshadow palette, because here's a blush and then here's the highlighter. But these tones here, gorgeous. And you don't have to be my skin tone or deeper to wear this. You can be any skin tone and wear this one. She came out with another one as well this year, the light one, face palette in light. That one I would say, once you get to mid-range in the skin tones and deeper, it's going to be a lot harder to see. But this one can go for any skin tone, and it's just incredible. It's a beautiful palette. It's a one and done. And definitely a good travel palette too, if you want to take your Natasha Denona out with you. Alright, you guys, so Natasha Denona Glam Face Palette in Dark. Alright, you guys, so the next brand in my little countdown thing here is Patrick Ta. He nailed the blushes. I did a Best of Beauty I'll put a link to it and probably a thumbnail picture here. And he was in there quite a bit, but he introduced this eyeshadow palette this year. It's the Major Dimension, and it's a neutral palette. First of all, I mean, I just love rose gold. I know it's not just about the packaging, it's about the product. But I mean, we gotta talk about packaging a little bit. This one here, I will say that this, of course, it's a neutral palette. It's not the one that I reach for the most, but I wanted to put this in here because I think this is a good palette for some of you who don't have an extensive collection and want kind of a different take on a neutral palette. Like this little flap here, these are cream here, so it's a darker cream and a lighter cream. Now this works as an eyeshadow alone if you kind of want that glowy look, or if you use this dark brown here, make sure it's in frame. You use this dark brown here as a base. Any color you put on it, it's going to intensify it. It's going to make it that much richer. And then you have shimmers here in the mattes. So for the concept alone, and for those of you who are really kind of wanting something different and a different take on a neutral palette, or really starting to get them, I really highly recommend this one. Yeah, I mean, sorry, you guys may hear something, that's my dog. But yeah, so the Patrick Ta Major Dimension Eyeshadow Palette. Oh, so the next brand in my top 21 of 21 is Anastasia Beverly Hills. I have always loved their formulas. Some of my favorite palettes, like the OG Modern Renaissance, Soft Glam, Jackie Ina's palette was absolutely beautiful. So this is the brand I'm going to talk about next. This next palette, you know, truthfully, when I saw it, the promo pics, I wasn't impressed, and I didn't even pick it up for quite a while. But then I started to see it in some of my favorite influencers videos, and they were talking about just the quality and the colors and how it looks different in person than it does online. So I was like, you know what, let me try it out, let me see. And they were not wrong. The Primrose palette, it's probably not going to transfer very well. It just looks like your basic palette, I'm sure, through the lens, but in person this is absolutely a stunning palette. This is another cheat. It's like a face palette type deal, like the Natasha Denona, because these are blushes, and then these are the I'm sorry, it's not in frame. These are the eyeshadows here, but this palette in person, it's just stunning. It's beautiful. Like, you have, if you're even considering it or you're on the fence, I would definitely say go to your Sephora, swatch it, take it home. I mean, you can, if you choose not to keep it, you can always bring it back, but take it home and play with it, because on the eyes, this is absolutely a gorgeous palette. I don't use the blushes too much. For my skin tone, they don't really do very much. Maybe this one a little bit. But you can use these as eyeshadows too, so you don't just have to be limited to what it says there. So yeah, the Anastasia Primrose palette. And then the second palette that I have from the Anastasia brand, it's the Norvina side of it. She has 4 others that she released. I'm sure you probably know what I'm talking about. But this one here, volume 5, let me pull it out and try not to blind you. Okay, it's a very specific color story. So you'll see when I pull it up, you have to kind of like purples. It's an all purple palette, clearly. But this is absolutely beautiful. Like, this is purple done right. It kind of reminds me of like Prince, you know, for those of you who know who he is. I had a moment. But back to the palette. This is actually a very, very good palette. Aside from, I'd say the con with these palettes in this series, and definitely this one, is it's huge. Like, huge. It's the size of my head, and I've got like a 12 head going on here, bigger than a forehead. So, you know, it's not one that I would see traveling with, because it is definitely one color story, but it's definitely worth the investment if you like purples and you like the Anastasia Beverly Hills formula. So, Norvina palette volume 5. Alright fam, we are nearing the end. 6 more palettes. It doesn't feel like I've been talking for that many palettes. I just unapologetically love makeup. My thing, eyeshadow palettes. Anyway, so the next brand that I have is Dominique Cosmetics. She's an influencer, pretty well known, and she has her own brand, Dominique Cosmetics. And when this palette came out, this again is in the neutral family. You'll see what I'm talking about. But this is genius, actually. It's a transition palette. This one is very similar in concept to the Gone Matte palette from Colourpop. And this one came out first. And definitely the pan sizes are bigger and you don't have as many colors. But the thing about this palette here, checking my monitor, make sure it's in frame. These double as eyeshadows. You can use them as blush. You can use it as contour. You can use it as setting powder. This is probably way too light for me to use, but if you're in that shade range, you absolutely can. So this actually is that one palette that you need and can take with you kind of anywhere and everywhere. The quality is really, really good. Definitely a step up from Colourpop. Colourpop is good too, though, so don't, you know, not knocking Colourpop at all. But this one, I just had so much fun with it when it first came out. Again, it's a neutral palette, nothing revolutionary, but the way she approached it and what you can do with all these tones and these shadows is definitely something that I really, really like, and definitely feel like it should definitely, how many times can I say definitely? It should be in the top 20 one of 2021. If you have the chance, I would say pick this up. You don't need, I definitely like the Colourpop one, but you don't necessarily need all those tones. This will give you everything you need. So Dominique Cosmetics Transition Palette. 5 palettes left, and of those 5 palettes, it's only 2 brands. But the single palette, from the single brand that I have, I always laugh at myself afterwards when I listen to like one of my videos and I'm saying this brand because it doesn't sound right, but Huda Beauty, it sounds like I'm saying Huda Booty. But Huda, you know what I'm trying to say. When this palette came out, oh my god, like, I didn't even do a review of it because there were so many out there. It just like saturated YouTube when this palette came out. This I have to pause. It is the Rose Quartz palette. And let's talk about the packaging. Packaging, whether you think it's, you know, essential or not, it's part of the presentation, and it makes you feel kind of what the palette's going to be about, what the color story is. It gives you the vibe before you even open up the palette, and this one truthfully does that. It looks kind of flat when you see it on screen, but in person this is raised and it kind of catches the light. It's really just stunning. You would think Rose Quartz would be rosy, but it is not. It is more kind of lilac. She always introduces this one shade that looks like, somebody said like Pop Rocks or whatever. It does look like that in person, just like a gloss with pebbles of color in there, and you swirl your finger around it, you actually get something there. But this is really, really worth it. So it is a lilac palette, but you have the dimension with these browns and the tones. It's much cooler. I personally love cool tone palettes and just cool tones in general. I think there's so much that you can do with them, so don't be afraid of them. Try not to be afraid of them, but this is a cooler tone palette, even more so in person, but it's so beautiful. Like, her metallics do not play. Let me show you this one. I swatched it over the other one. Yeah, I'm not very coordinated with looking, and yeah. But anyway, this, her metallics bling and shine. It just, this palette, don't sleep on this one. It is definitely worth consideration, and I would say absolutely get this palette. There's a reason why so many people have reviewed this palette. I'll do a look on it, but it won't be a review. There's too many reviews on there. But it's definitely worth it. The Rose Quartz palette by Huda Beauty. Maybe if I say it slower, it doesn't sound like Huda Beauty. Alright, you guys. The last word coming up. I would say maybe leave a comment down below if you can guess what my last brand is. I mean, it probably shouldn't come as a surprise. This is one of my top 2 all-time favorite brands. One is Natasha Denona for her artistry and creativity and just quality, everything about her. And the other one is Miss Pat Mcgrath. She just kills it. Kills it. So my last 4 palettes in my top 21 of 21 are Miss Pat Mcgrath. So the first one that I have is the Divine Rose. I'm looking down to read it, guys. The Divine Rose quad called Eternal Eden. Now, if you watch any of my videos or even follow me on Instagram, you know I love pink. I mean, pink is like, I would wear pink all the time, truthfully, if I could. Mix in a few other colors, but primarily pink. But this one is a rosy pink palette. Look at the packaging, the box. I keep my boxes, especially Pat Mcgrath, because it's like a piece of art. I'm an artist and I just love the attention to detail. So aside from that little rant, this is such a, I always say such a, but this isn't a gorgeous palette on the eyes. I mean, it's relatively very simple, but it's the quality of the shadows. It's this shimmer here, these mattes. It's just really beautiful. I love this palette. I would absolutely say if you like pink or even want to try a little pink, definitely think about that one. The next one that I have is Venus and Fleur. This is more of a neutral tone, but the way this looks on your eyes, it is just, her magic is in her shimmers. The quality of the mattes are always, I mean, 99% of the time they're spot on. But her magic of her brand is in her shimmers. She just puts something in those things that just transforms on your eyes. I mean, you can turn one way, get a different look. It's not even just that it's a duochrome, but it's just the magnetic, the magical quality. I can't even talk clearly. the magical quality of these on your eyes. And I know I'm putting a lot on it, but really when you try, if you haven't tried any of her stuff, try one of the quads and the shimmers. You'll see why they're just, people rave about them. So this is the Venus and Fleur Luxe Quad. And then the next two that I have, this is one of her Mothership palettes. I will say that this one, the packaging on the outside, albeit very beautiful, is a little deceiving because the color story is not like this. But I will show you, of course, the palette here. I don't want to blind you, so this is going to be rather interesting to show you. Make sure it's in frame there. Now, when I was talking about her shimmer shades, these are her special shades here. And what these do, you can use them just alone. You can put them on top of a matte or another shimmer, and it just transforms into this whole other thing. And this palette here, I would say this is one of her best. Absolutely one of her best. The mattes in here, the shimmers, the tones in here. It is definitely more of a rosier tone, which I told you guys I love pink and rosy colors. So I'm a happy camper with this one, but it's the Utopian Dream palette by Pat McGrath. And then the last palette, if I were to rank, I would definitely say that it would probably be in the top 3. But I didn't rank, but I'm just saying, you know, it would definitely be in the top 3. It is the last one I'm showing you of my top 21 of 21. And it is the Pat McGrath Mothership Mega Celestial Odyssey palette. I have a video on this, and I will put a picture of the thumbnail down below so you can find it and watch it. Make me so very happy. But I'm going to try to hold this up and not drop it. This is a mostly shimmer palette. I mean, I think there are a total of 4 mattes in this one. I'm trying not to dig into the shadows and get it so you can see it. So forgive me. This palette here, you guys, it's worth it. Absolutely worth it being in the top of anybody's ranking. Top of last year, top in your collection. I mean, don't be afraid of a mostly shimmer palette, because I'm sure if you have 1 or 2 palettes, you have those basic mattes. The shimmers in this palette are worth the investment because they add so much to your look, and then when you start combining the colors, it's just insane what this palette will do. Yeah, I'm raving about it, and it's worth all the praise. So this is the Pat McGrath Celestial Odyssey palette, and that is it for my rankings. You know what, guys? Thank you for spending some time with me. I could talk all day and all night about eyeshadow palettes. It's the primary focus of my channel. It's what you'll see on my Instagram. I just love what you can do with eyeshadow palettes, and it was quite challenging for me to get, out of all the palettes that I've tried this year, to get 21 for 2021 and not just put everything in there together. But I picked the ones that I thought, you know, you would get some use out of, and if you were thinking about venturing into that category or that brand or that color story, I would show it to you, because it's all these palettes here are definitely worth the investment. They inspire creativity, or they're your basic essential palette that you need. All of these things I really thought about, and I love them all. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any suggestions about some of these palettes, or maybe want to start a conversation with me, please do in the comments. I love talking to you guys. Yeah, aside from that, you guys, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I did do a best of beauty for 2021. I will link it above and put, again, probably the thumbnail picture somewhere down here. Please check it out. All right, you guys, so thank you for giving me your time, whatever time it is for you, morning, noon, or night. I appreciate you giving me some of it. Bye, guys.